Welcome back to Heathen Outdoors. Last episode, we put out the art of e-scouting. Today's episode is going to be an extension of the art of e-scouting. We're going to cover many topics in one. Just going to give you a quick table of contents so you know what you need to stick around for. Today, we're going to be covering creek bottoms. And in my last episode, I covered what I've been looking for this season, compounding terrain features. We're going to go into what that is. We're also going to talk a little bit about pressured deer and what they do differently than your non-pressured deer. We're going to talk about thermals and hill country, just a hair. And then we're going to be talking about a contradicting piece of information that you definitely want to stick around for, which is east-facing ridges in hill country versus south to southwest-facing hills, and which one you should set up on or be scouting, and if it's dependent on time of year, terrain, location, whatever that case may be. And then, if you stick around till the end, I'm going to give you a piece of information from my military career that could help you along in the woodline when you're scouting or just going to your stand or going back to your truck, whatever it may be, and just give you some insight. But you may already do this if you're an avid outdoorsman. You just don't have the acronym built in to what you're doing, and maybe we can extend what you're doing a little bit further so that way it works out better for you. So if you stick around to the end, you'll get that. This video may be a little bit longer and have a lot more information put into it than the first 9-minute video that I put out. If you like what you see in the first episode, or you want to see more like this information, go ahead and like and subscribe. That way you can get notified when the next video is out. Just got back from a PA hunt in hill country this past weekend. It was not successful as I wanted it to be, but I did learn a lot more about hill country and thermals and navigating that terrain and scouting that terrain. Did make a video prior to going to PA, and I was going to edit it and submit it while I was there, but I was learning so much as I was on the ground after I'd already scouted those spots that I wanted to come back and just give a good retake. This is my second time making this video. With all that said, tomorrow I'm leaving for Kentucky and going to be dealing with some different terrain that I'm used to as well there. And hopefully PA and that hill country helped me for what I'm about to endure starting on Thursday morning. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get right into it. First, creek bottoms. How do we scout them? What do we look for? What I'm looking for when I scout on the line, if you will, is, let me scroll in here. I have a few samples here on this screen already. I'm circling it with my mouse right now. I'm going to zoom in. What I look for is technically a pinch point in the creek bottom. Right here, I've zoomed in pretty far on this one. Looks like a pretty tight spot. This is obviously a wide open creek right here. And then it looks like maybe there's a little bit of a land bridge there. And then I'm going to zoom out because these other portions, there are different examples in here, but they're kind of all the same concept. This one right here, it has a bunch of wood on this side, a bunch of woodland. And then on this side, it's got a woodland as well. That comes into a pinch point. It's kind of like a land bridge, but it would be easier for them to cross through here. And then this area out here for definitely like fawns and young bucks and does. This is good bedding area right here because most likely that spot is going to have, we're going to go into topographic and LiDAR real quick. All right, so there's your extra woody or wetland right there. All right, that's the stuff that you're gonna go step onto it and go knee deep in mud right there, right? But as for deer, that area right there it provides, you have cover and you got concealment, right? Your concealment is just gonna conceal you from your enemies, putting that in the military term perspective, but you won't be able to be seen. Covers what stops a projectile, if you will. So trees or terrain features. We know that as far as security goes, especially for your more mature bucks, they prefer sleeping up high, about the top third of a ridge, and they most likely go to benches, or if you get to that ridge line, you see like a down tree, that's a good spot. They want 50 to 75% canopy. That is important to them, and we will explain why here in a few. So once again, here's another, you have this wide open creek bottom right here, and obviously bedding area in here, most likely. But then anything that's bedding, say right here on this, as we said in the last video, that fat line, this is a good spot right here. That could be a travel corridor or bedding. You just got to go get on ground and see. Let's say this deer right here wants to go over here for feeding, for does, for whatever the case may be. Do you think that deer is going to cross this wide open, or do you think it's going to come to either A, right here, through and just cross right here, or do you think it's going to come up from this spot here and go this way and cross on the other end? It's going to do one of the two, more likely than crossing straight through this wide open terrain. It's going to go to the more secure area versus that wide open. That's the point that I'm getting at. And that's what I look for when I look for creek bottom. Here is one more example, the last example, and we're going to move on. You have this wide open terrain right here again, wide open terrain over here. And then in between those two wide open terrains, you have this one spot that looks like it goes all the way through, and it's super thick up in there that entire time. So I'm not saying go sit directly on the spot, but it would funnel any deer in this area, say they're bedding right here, or they're bedding over here, or they're traveling over here. Instead of it walking through this open terrain or this open terrain, it would funnel all the deer in this area and on that other side to push this way. So staging yourself anywhere in this area, so long as when you go scout this terrain and you do see the traffic that we believe to be there through e-scouting, then anywhere in this terrain would be a good spot to, go and hunt at. That's how I do my e-scouting for creek bottoms. We're going to move into compounding terrain features. I have put out a video on this exact terrain before. It's once again just some random public land that I grabbed here in New York State this time. But this terrain, it's not necessarily hill country, as you can tell in the video. It's not flat either. it's you gotta just zooming out real quick. You got a large valley here, and you got a large ridge line on that side, and then you got a ridge that I'm working off of right here, and then you got a large valley over here as well. This is a good spot for me to use as an example because it has a lot of terrain features that we can go over. Going into compounding terrain features, what is that? Let's go into it. Going into topographic, going into my LiDAR. Can you find a compounding terrain feature without LiDAR? Absolutely. Does LiDAR make it easier or stick more out that you wouldn't normally see? Yes, it does. When we talk about compounded terrain features, we're not saying, oh, a hill that's connected to a saddle, because you need a hill to have a saddle, right? We're talking about terrain features that aren't necessarily terrain features, like a travel corridor, which would be a bench on the side of a ridge line, going into a saddle, or something of the nature. Things that deer use that we know of. So let's say a bench, for example, and a saddle. A bench leading into a saddle. That is what I would consider a compounding terrain feature. Multiple types of terrain features that we know deer like to use. What we have right here in this area, and why I put a ladder stand, as you can tell, I put two ladder stands right here, and I have the wind indicator on one of them. And what that does, okay, so I have selected this spot as a good spot to hunt. We're going to go over why first, and then I'll tell you why I have two waypoints right here. So first, you have this obvious bench here on the southwest side of this ridge, and we're going to go over that. You have that bench / travel corridor right there. And then over this way, you also have this slight draw. It's not exactly a draw, but it's definitely a depression in the land, and it does have that slight V or U shape going up into the terrain. But in one of the videos I had posted previously, it's not on YouTube, it's just on my TikTok channel where I post mostly clips of these longer videos, and then the the good old funny hunting videos just because I'm a funny guy. So if you like that type stuff or you want to see little clips, go follow my Heathen Outdoors TikTok page. We're going to go into why this is important right here. You see, right here, you obviously have a saddle. So we know they like that, but it also has this lip right there. So it would be a pretty good travel corridor for deer to use to get up and down on this ridgeline. And it's already slightly traversing diagonally on that ridgeline. If you, as a human, want to go up a hill or down a hill, maybe you don't know this, maybe you do, but traversing straight up and straight down is not the best way to navigate that. You would do it diagonally. And deer do the same exact thing. It makes it easier to travel. This would be a travel corridor. And then over here, you have another travel corridor, kind of the same thing, going diagonally from that one and meeting perpendicular. Then you also have these two travel corridors right there and right there, all converging into this one spot, which is also a bench, as you can see. So that would make this circle where I'm circling my mouse right here a good compounding terrain feature that I would want to go scout in person. Now, why do I have a ladder stand there on the waypoint and then a ladder stand waypoint right there? That is all dependent on wind direction. With this west facing wind right now, I would probably not focus on deer coming from this area. But let's say I go scout, I see sign of life, and I put cameras out. And then on the camera, all the deer are coming from that way. Then I just know that that's not the day to hunt this. But let's say we have a north wind in this spot right here. If I have a northern wind, instead of putting myself on the bottom side of this bench, I could just put myself on the southern side of, or up higher on this ridge. I could put myself here in this spot, and obviously I'd go scout both, find a good tree, find the shooting angles, all that. I have a saddle, so I'd probably take that out with me and climb up and see what it looks like from the tree. Good form, fit, and functionality test of that tree and my equipment in that tree. Probably smart to do, but anyways, if I have a northern wind, I could sit on the top. If I have that southern wind, I could sit on the bottom. West wind here and east wind, probably not the best time to sit there. That is very distinct to each individual location. So I just put that on one indicator and then go from there. We're going to cover this spot as well. So right here, this is, I'm going to go back out into hybrid so you can see those contour lines a little bit better. Right here, you see that this is a hill, which is obviously top of the ridge. And then you got a hill here, or a hilltop, like the top point of elevation on this ridge line. And you have those multiple spots, which is why you get the saddle, because you see this contour line coming in and almost touching this other contour line on the opposite side. Going back over to topographic and LiDAR again, you can see over here, now this one is pretty steep. It's a lot steeper. And it's still going diagonal. I wouldn't necessarily expect a deer to travel directly up all the way here. However, what do we have on this side of the ridge, which is your southern facing side of the ridge? You have this really good bench right here. I really like that bench. It sticks out to me. You also have a bench here, you got a little bench there. You got all these spots that are uneven bits of terrain that provide flat locations and good security for those larger, more mature bucks. We have a bench here, we got a bench here. It's pretty much all the way up this ridge line, you have benches. So very good spot for a lot of deer. And if a buck is, let's say, right here where my mouse is circling right now, it wouldn't be that big of a deal for him to go up this right here, while it would be a lot different for him to go all the way up, right? Right here, as you can see, this bench slowly goes up. It still has that gradual flat mark, and then it comes up, and then you got that saddle right here. So once again, I got my two ladder stands there, and it just kind of depends on the wind, right? With that west wind right now, I probably wouldn't put myself right over here. And if I really wanted to hunt the spot, I'd put myself over here and hope that the wind didn't blow too far in that direction that we would assume that he is at. Or maybe that deer would be somewhere over here. Who knows? You'd have to go on the ground to scout that. All right, moving along. Pressure deer. Moving into the next section of the video. And this is really kind of just a lessons learned from on-ground experience from this year's hunting in my local area. Getting a sip of coffee, one sec. So a lot of people are starting to find out about my hunting, my current hunting spot, and the pressure is just insane. Insane. It's crazy. There was one spot, 800 acres, and that was where I wanted to go on opening day. The amount of people that are allowed in that spot are 20 at a time. At some point, 3 or 4 people signed out, and then 3 or 4 more people went in. It ended up being a total of 25 people in that first day. And that first 3 weeks of hunting, that spot got absolutely hammered. Did people harvest deer in there? Yes, some, but not that much. But the deer just like disappeared. I stopped going over there. I took all my cameras out. And then one day I had the opportunity to go out and scout that area. And I did some research on top of that of what pressure deer do and where they go. You really think a lot of times, man, these deer, they done left this land. And that's not necessarily the case. Will some leave and push across and push into a different area that is less pressured? Absolutely. But typically, they're going to stay within their home range, but they're going to go into the more secure places. They're going to go into the thicker brush. They're going to go higher up into the ridgeline. They're going to go into the swamps. And in that early season, they are still conserving energy. They're not trying to move as much, especially with the heat, especially with no does being in estrus. Like they are, in heat, they don't have the desire and the necessity to move as much. So what I need to do is, one, they pattern us just like we pattern them. So when do most people hunt? The weekends. So if you have the opportunity to go hunt during the weekdays, that would be a better time to hunt. So that's the time. And then the place, go to the overlooked places, find the less pressured areas where less people are going, and hunt those weird spots, the spots that you wouldn't expect typically to find a lot of movement. But because of that pressure, you want to go get deeper into those spots. I had the opportunity to go out and scout one day. And I wanted to go as deep as possible. I'm talking to the very, very end. It would have been 1.5 miles deep in this 800-acre plot or track, whatever. And as I was going along, things that happened definitely surprised me. So, number one, I bumped a few deer, which good and bad, more pressured. The good thing is I saw where they were when I bumped them, which were inside of the little valleys and I guess you could call them creek bottoms. They weren't necessarily creeks, but they were low points of terrain and they had little hilltops. On those little hilltops where they could look 360 degrees around them and see anything within 100 yards of them, that was where they were bedding down midday. It was about 11 or 12 when I went out. And I bumped 2 deer on that same piece of terrain about 300 yards apart. So one hilltop, and I'm talking 10 to 12 foot up high versus all the rest of the terrain in that location. And then 300 yards down, same thing again. I get to the very end, the very edge of this property where it dips off into a ridge line. And I'm talking like 80 feet down and mostly just straight, almost cliff. A few spots to come up. So those would be your good pinch points, right? But then about 300 yards, two to 300 yards between the ridge line is all wood all the way to an interstate. So on that ridge line, as I was looking down and scouting down there, because I figured that's where they were going, I bumped 2 more on that ridge line, another 500 yards in. And then I finally got to a spot where it was one of the main pinch points that you could see online, like coming up, a good draw from the lower piece of property up to the higher piece of property. I bumped another deer, and that was where I ended up setting for the rest of the day. And I had another doe blow me in a dense thicket, As soon as I was setting up, I was almost like, dang, man, I may as well move again. But I sat there in another 20 minutes. A group of turkeys came behind me, and then another 30 minutes, a small doe came in front of me. I did have a shot, but it was so small. I was like, I'm going to leave that. So that was a lessons learned for me. Maybe you can take away something from that. I hope you can. And yeah, that is my lessons learned on pressure deer. Thermals in hill country. Let's cover that one next. Woo. So, am I a master? Am I a pro at thermals? Not necessarily. But what I will tell you, learning from going to PA and studying thermals for this video and for myself, hunting in this hill country, we're going to use something on here. Let's say this spot right here. In the morning, down here at the bottom of this ridge line, as the sun rises, we know the heat goes up. Your thermals, your moisture molecules, would be traveling upward. So if you were hunting down low in the morning in this spot right here, and your intended animal that you're going to harvest is up here, they could possibly detect you. Now, does wind come into play? Yes. At what point do we consider wind more important over thermals or vice versa? Research tells me that if you're not in hill country or if you're not in a thermal hub, if you're in terrain that I am typically hunting up here, you need to consider wind over your thermals. However, if you're in a thermal hub, you don't have to be in hill country to have a thermal hub. If you're in that thermal hub, you definitely need to consider your thermals just as important as your wind. And then if you're in hill country, you need to still pay attention to that wind. However, you need to consider thermals more than your wind. Bottom line is, in the mornings, you want to hunt higher. You want to be above the deer if you can be. And then in the afternoons, you want to be below. When I went down to PA this past weekend, my very first hunt, I went to the creek bottom, and it was definitely hill country. I went directly to the creek bottom. I didn't put myself, on the way to the bottom. I put myself at the bottom, which maybe it could have worked out better for me if I hunted that spot 4 days in a row or something. But the day that I did hunt it, I saw the most sign of life I've ever seen in my entire life hunting. It was just everywhere. Cracks, ups, scrapes, yeah, everything. It was all over the place. But I didn't see or hear a thing. I didn't bump anything. I didn't bump anything on the way out. Nothing. Then I hunted up high the next day, and I still didn't see a thing, but I hunted a good spot, and it just wasn't the right day. The next day, I finally kind of figured it out, right? But I had 17 mile per hour wind with 34 mile per hour gust. I walked about halfway up this ridge line. I mean, it was gradual, and then it, dipped straight up. But that gradual part, I was like, I'm going to put myself in between, about in the middle. And I saw, once again, so much sign. Like, I saw hundreds of scrapes that day. It was ridiculous. Not giving away my spot in PA publicly. But the wind was just way too brutal to be out there. Had it been local, I wouldn't have even hunted that afternoon, but I just did. It was my last day hunting, so I wanted to try. But goodness at the sign, it was ridiculous. Let's break that down into 4 quarters. Top being that, first 25%, bottom being that last. And then if you were to hunt in the morning time, I would put yourself at like the 30-40% of the way from the top. And then in the afternoon, put yourself about, 60-70% of the way down into that creek bottom from the top and catch them en route. That would be my advice for thermals from what I've learned so far. And if you know more than me on thermals, I'm still learning that. And that's not this whole videos. If you know more than me, please leave a comment and let me know that my knowledge of thermals is not extensive enough and I need to do more research, and I gladly will, and I'll put that information out. So, moving right along, contradicting information, here we go. So, going back to the screen here, do we hunt the east-facing ridges? Do deer like to bed there more, or the southwest slopes? Because upon doing research, I saw The answer was both. I'm like, well, wait a minute. That's kind of contradicting. So I'm going to read off this information from my research directly and just give you exactly what it said. And you can base your opinion off of that. So, just for the purpose of citations and giving credit where credit is due, this information comes from Mississippi State University Deer Lab, the National Deer Association, and high-following creators like Realtree. Everything that I used was research-backed, not just your hunting bro science. East-facing ridges and southwest-facing ridges slopes are used by bucks for bedding, but their preference depends on environmental factors, weather, season, time of day, and behavioral drivers, security, and thermal regulation. Here is a breakdown. East-facing ridges for bedding and why they're favored. East-facing ridges are often cited as prime bedding sites in hill country, particularly morning thermals. Research from Whitetail Partners and posts on Twitter or X highlight that east-facing slopes catch morning sun, warming bucks after cooler nights, and align with rising thermals that carry scent uphill, aiding predator detection. NDA notes bucks bed on these ridges for security, often on points or benches, almost said bitches, with 50 to 75% canopy cover, allowing visibility downslope while leveraging wind, context, and timing. This preference is strongest in early morning or during stable weather. MSU GPS data shows bucks bed on elevated terrain like east-facing ridges to exploit thermal drafts, especially pre-rut, when they're balancing security with scouting for does. Realtree emphasizes these spots for their see, smell, hear advantage, with bucks facing downwind to monitor approaches. Terrain specificity, dude. I did not pay attention in English. Leave me alone, okay? In hill country, Appalachians, Ozarks, east-facing ridges often have benches or spurs that bucks use as bedding platforms, per bow hunter and Onyx hunt guides. These features provide escape routes and cover, making them king for bedding in rugged terrain. South and southwest facing slopes for bedding. Why they're favored? South and southwest facing slopes are preferred in fall, particularly as temperatures drop, because they maximize sun exposure for warmth. Missouri Extension and Whitetail Partners research shows bucks select these slopes in cooler weather, late October through November, to conserve energy via thermal regulation. Bucks favor slopes with 50 to 75% canopy cover for warmth and concealment, especially in pre-rut phase. Context and timing. This preference kicks in during cooler days or afternoons when bucks seek sun-warm spots to rest. NDA and Realtree confirm south-facing slopes are common bedding areas in fall, particularly in regions with cold fronts, as bucks reduce movement in harsh conditions and prioritize energy conservation. In warmer pre-rut periods, early October, bucks may shift to shadier areas, but by late pre-rut, south-southwest slopes dominate. These slopes are often less rugged than east-facing ridges, found in rolling hills or open hardwood forests, and are near food sources like acorn flats, per MSU data. Reconciling the contradiction, both are accurate. The apparent contradiction arises from different environmental and behavioral contexts, not mutually exclusive preferences. Here's how both can be true. Time of day. East-facing ridges are prime in the morning due to thermals and early sun, ideal for buck bedding and after nocturnal movement. Southwest facing slopes are preferred later in the day or in colder weather with sustained warmth. Weather and season. In early pre-rut, warmer, bucks may lean towards east-facing ridges for morning thermals and security. As fall cools, late pre-rut, your southwest slopes become more attractive for thermal regulation. In steep hill country, east-facing ridges with benches are king for secure bedding due to elevation and escape routes. In gentler terrain and open woods, southwest facing slopes near food sources are equally common. Buck age and behavior. This goes into play as well. Mature bucks, 3.5 plus years, prioritize security, east-facing ridges over warmth, per Boone and Crockett, while younger bucks may use south-facing slopes closer to food. So if you are a meat eater, you're trying to put food in your freezer, do what you will with this information. And if you are looking for the mature bucks, Specifically, maybe lean towards those east-facing ridges. No matter the, later season, it's saying that they're probably going to use those east-facing ridges regardless of warmth over security. So, MSU GPS studies confirm bucks use multiple bedding sites, average 31 per season, rotating based on these factors. So, both locations are part of their strategy. No single slope orientation is universally best. Context is everything. So, essentially, based off of that information, in my area and in this area that I've used for this example video, this south-southwest facing slope this time of year would be best. However, if I'm going after a mature buck, the east-facing ridges may be better. So, the last section of this video we're going to cover. We're going to talk about scouting, and this applies when you're walking to your stand as well. So let's say we want to go scout this area. We want to scout the creek bottom and the ridge lines. We want to just look in this general area. We've never been out there before, which I haven't, but we're gonna build a route. Bam, 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 bam. 2-point drop. Bam. Okay. We're talking today about an acronym that is used in the military, especially in combat operations. And when you think about it, infantry, as I was, we hunted men. And with that, the enemy that we were hunting had a weapon, so they also hunted us. You're not necessarily top of the food chain there. So you kind of have to think similar to how deer think. We are their enemy, and they have to avoid us, right? We want to detect them as well early because we're hunting. But while you're on your scout, I want you to consider yourself out on patrol for your enemy. When you're doing that, if you're scouting properly, if you're an avid outdoorsman, you probably already do this once again. Every few minutes, you're going to stop. We're going to stop right there. And you're going to conduct SILS. SLLS. You're going to stop. That's the first part of SILS. You're going to look. What are we looking for? In the infantry, we would look for any sign of life. And you're going to do the same thing. You're looking for any sign of life of deer, but you have to consider hunting pressure. So you're looking for sign of life of humans as well. A good example that I would use when I was training my subordinates in the military is a pack of cigarettes. And we can apply this to deer hunting as well. And I'll kind of do that here, but let me just explain a pack of cigarettes. If you're walking along and you conduct SILS here, just boom, you're conducting SILS every time you stop. And when you conduct this, 2 to 4 minutes is plenty. And sometimes 30 seconds, sometimes a little longer. It just depends. It depends on your gut feeling. Trust your instinct. So, pack of cigarettes and what it tells us. So, just a pack of cigarettes laying on the ground can tell you a lot more than like somebody littered here. How many cigarettes is left in that pack? Is it empty? Is it empty and there are a bunch of cigarette butts laying around? Is it full? What can that tell us? So an empty pack of cigarettes with a bunch of cigarette butts laying around means somebody was in that position and they were doing some sort of scouting or reconnaissance. They were there for a long period of time. So how could you apply that for deer hunting? I hope that the guy out there isn't smoking a whole pack of cigarettes or smoking at all while he's walking through the woods. Let's use orange tags. You see the orange tags and you see a couple batteries on the ground, right? So obviously somebody hunted there. Their equipment was low on battery. They dropped it out of their equipment. They changed that battery there. It could mean that they were doing that while on their walk, but more sign in that area could tell you. And also, just as a quick disclaimer here, if you go into the woods and you're one of those people that like to leave things laying around in the woods, stop doing that. Quit it. It gives away your position, your hunting spot to other hunters, for one. And two, this is our public land. It's not just mine. It's not just yours either. It's ours. We have to share it. Keep my shit clean, and I'll keep your shit clean. It's pretty simple. Anyways, moving along, deer, okay? If we see we get to this point, right? We see a trail and we see old droppings. We see a beaten path, but we see that one set of old droppings that's all dried up. And then we see nothing else, no tracks. What does that tell you? That tells you that it was a good pattern for deer during the summer. but they have moved along from that position. It could take you to their bedding area, could potentially do that, could just be an old path. We're looking for that bedding area that has a bunch of droppings on it, scrapes, rubs, fresh tracks, all of that, especially in that lower wetland. That is where you can really tell everything that's going on. So yeah, each one of these pins that I'm dropping, you're doing that stop, look, listen, and smell. You want to pay attention to any bit of sign that deer can give you and other animals in that terrain, as well as humans, because that can tell you a lot. And if you don't know what that can tell you, we could talk about that on the next episode here at Heathen Outdoors. Please like, follow, subscribe, do all of the things. I greatly appreciate it. I'm just simply a veteran trying to make a living off of doing things that I love to do. And one of the things that I love to do in the military, and something I was very good at, was teaching and coaching and mentoring my men. And now that I've gotten out, I just want to teach other people what I'm passionate about in a way that, makes them want to learn more. So if you like this video, please subscribe and comment on it. Let me know what else you want to see. I would love to know what you want to learn. As I said earlier in the video, I got a Kentucky trip coming up this coming up weekend. I'm leaving tomorrow and I'm going to be gone all the way through till Monday, Tuesday next week. Hopefully we bag one and I get a video out, but if not, we're going to put a video out of lessons learned for hunting public land that you've never been to before and how to do that successfully, because that is one hard thing to do, to walk on the land that you've never been before and you only got 4 or 5 days and to bag an animal. Once again, hopefully I do. If not, we'll still post a video of lessons learned, and then we'll do another video similar to the videos that I have done, like this one and the one prior, and get some information out there. So if you want to learn something, even if I don't know it, I will go and teach myself. That's what I'm good at doing, teaching myself. And while it's fresh on my mind, putting out there a class on it. So comment, let me know. Welcome to Heathen Outdoors, where I blend my military experience with passion for the wild, delivering rugged adventures and survival skills. Oh yeah.